What happened to the great directors? Ford, Hitchcock, Scorsese, Lucas, Spielberg. Just a few of cinema's greats whose talents for visual storytelling helped shape the culture of not only their respective generations, but many thereafter. Along with many others, they're household names, with rosters of box office powerhouses, the most notable among them prompting the infamous letters of congratulatory one-upmanship between BFFs Spielberg and Lucas. Now, roughly in the middle of the 2020s, it seems that the directors whose names alone could fill theaters are kind of a thing of the past. Two possible exceptions to that are Denis Villeneuve, whose incredible talent behind the camera is always present, even though his audience might not always be, and Christopher Nolan, who, after his true magnum opus Inception, has been increasingly driving a wedge in between his diehard fans who've been following him since the beginning, and casual viewers who are asleep after the first 2 hours of his films.
I can't do this anymore. I can't. It's too long.
Outside of those two, the modern age of cinema is seeing a bit of a lack of notable directors producing well-made, well-loved films. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of other directors who are doing great work, people like Matt Reeves and Sam Mendes, but again, they're not household names. And this isn't all for a lack of work, with multitudes of IPs being squeezed for every last penny that they can produce, studios desperate for a hit, and not to mention the affordability of equipment and the wide reach of social media. It's easier than ever for an eager young director to go out and make a name for themselves and gain widespread acclaim. Yet, as an audience, all we're getting is more of the same. Bland, forgettable content to hold us over until the next round of bland, forgettable content. So how is that? Especially given the amount of money thrown at projects and the incredible advancements in technology. We should be living in a renaissance of visually gorgeous works from creative new minds that never cease to captivate. Unfortunately, the problem is this: there are no directors anymore. Now, sure, there are people occupying the role of director on set, but I mean this in the technical term. They are not actually directors. To elaborate, let's break down the exact roles of a film director. So what do they do? What don't they do? And what separates the greats from their modern counterparts? Let's start with the misconceptions surrounding film directing. First, the director is not an all-powerful ruler on set. Yes, they carry the overall vision and answer aesthetic questions from different people all across the set, but most of the other departments are run by their own department heads, and the director more or less signs off approval on their work done independently from them, which is good because you definitely don't want the director ordering around electricians dropping three-phase power. Furthermore, directors have to answer to bosses of their own, namely studio executives and producers, so if your quest is for ultimate power, directing might disappoint you. Along those lines, the director is also not in charge of the exact shots or lighting. Those fall under the jurisdiction of the cinematographer or director of photography. Most people first getting into directing come in with a misconception based around the phrase, "I have these shots in my head." Like the previous misconception, the director doesn't order around the camera and lighting department, but he works in conjunction with them to achieve the overall look of the film by laying out sort of generalities of what they want, and trusting the cinematographer to pick the right lenses, angle of light, temperature, and then so on and so forth. So all this being said, what does a director actually do? Well, in addition to the aforementioned duties, which essentially amount to checking that everyone is working towards a common vision, the director has two primary functions. The first is fairly straightforward and should come as no surprise. They have to work with the actors in bringing out their best performances. This could be as elaborate and intense as Ridley Scott's staging of one of horror's most infamous scenes and not telling the actors in order to get genuine reactions, or as relaxed and trusting as Clint Eastwood's approach, saying something like, "Well, go ahead then," in lieu of action, and relying on as little as 1 to 2 takes per scene. Whether obsessive like Kubrick or relaxed like Lucas, the way a director works with the film actors forms a massive part of their role. Now, the second and more technical aspect of directing is the implementation of blocking and staging, which refer to the placement of the actors in space in relation to the camera, and the placement of objects in space in relation to the camera. This is where a background in theater can be really helpful. Knowing how an actor's placement in relationship to the audience can affect how they connect with the character, and how physical props and objects can affect and disrupt that connection. The foundational principles of blocking and staging are noticeably absent in most of modern cinema, especially when combined with technology that essentially strips away all depth and forces directors to work within the parameters of a stage. At best, a lack of knowledge and finesse in blocking and staging leads to flashy, yet empty images that fail to help the audience really connect with the characters, and at worst, showcases the film's absence of a real director. Cinema's great directors all had a keen understanding of the relationship between actors, props, environment, and the camera, and utilized that knowledge to the fullest, often in very subtle ways, which more than anything else is what's elevated their films to the level they are.
I've always enjoyed making pictures. I like the people that I'm around.